My name is Emily Bishop, and I am a simulation technician, healthcare simulation technician for the College of Nursing at CU. And I'm here today to talk to you about something that isn't really discussed very often. It's how we're managing our waste. Okay. So I worked bedside care for 15 years as a certified nursing assistant. So I'm very familiar with why it's necessary to be throwing stuff away, right, in simulation, and kind of having that muscle memory of tearing open a package, throwing it away, right? The beauty about simulation is that we don't actually have to throw it away. We should all be kind of rethinking what we decide is actual trash. Okay. So I actually heard from an Anaxel fireside chat 2 years ago when I first started doing this. There's 5 billion tons of medical waste globally per year. So that is enough to go around the globe multiple times with a line of garbage trucks. So to me, I was thinking in simulation, we're working with stuff that's not contaminated, right? It's basically plastic and silicone going into other plastic and silicone. So I came up with a repackaging protocol because to me, I think that the onus is on us with what we do with that waste, right? So this protocol, it transcends disciplines. It can apply to dental medicine, veterinary, human, anything that's using similar materials. So basically, here's my piloted solution. No disclosures. Basically, the only thing that we're buying here is more time for the planet. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Basically, long and short of it is, I want to take what is happening here and on the right and turn it into what's happening here on the left. Okay. These are repackaged materials. This is all IV tubing. So you can see we've got syringe, we've got gravity, secondary. This is just one bin. So I started this program because, as you can see here, we went through OSCE testing and, I was pretty new to simulation. And I was like, wow, we are wasting so much stuff. We were ending up with, I think, 8 of these trash cans per campus per day when we were doing OSCE testing. And I'm like, this is crazy. We would maybe have a student that would break sterile just by, tearing open the package, not doing the banana peel the right way or whatever. And then it would be considered trash. To me, I'm like, let's throw some rubber cement on there, like let's find a way to get another use out of that before we just consider it trash. So basically this protocol is how can we reuse more? We're going to divert it back into our program instead of going into the landfill. I will say this is turning out to be a pretty cost-effective initiative, although I started this with the intent to improve planetary health. It just so happens that saving money is a bit of a byproduct of this as well. So this presentation kind of includes a very high volume example of what you might be able to produce in your own program. We currently have 2 campuses that are operating using this system, and we're introducing it to our third. So it's been quite successful for us. But when you see pictures and stuff in here, please just know that this is a much higher volume than you might be seeing in your program. So in speaking of high volume as well, I just want to say, don't be overwhelmed by any of this either, because I just encourage you and your program to do whatever you have the bandwidth for. So you might not have the bandwidth to, recycle, repackage every single material that goes through your program. Maybe you only have time to focus on tubing, and that's great. Maybe you only have time to focus on IV start kits. Awesome. The point of this is anything that we do in our programs is better than nothing, right? So basically, just choose your own adventure. What you see, what works for you, adopt what's going to work for you. Okay, so as I said, we piloted this initiative in our program. It won an award. It was the first place winner of the University of Colorado Controller System-Wide Award for Excellence in Innovation and Efficiency. It's a mouthful, but it was a very, very big honor. I've presented this at IMSH. I presented it a couple other times to other programs that are interested. And to me, it just basically means that the world is listening. People are interested in doing this. They just don't really know where to start. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and flip to the next one. Here's a photo of me. I did work as a CNA for 15 years. When I graduated from college, I have a degree in anthropology and I went and worked as an archaeologist for 2 years. So, what we're talking about today actually is based completely on archaeological methodology. So, what I learned is you're going to collect your material, right? Screen it. You're going to decide what you're going to toss, what you're going to keep. Then, what you're going to do is take all of those materials, sort them into piles. Okay. So, you've got a pile of forceps over here, you've got a pile of fenestrated drapes over here. That way, when you're ready to just make a repackage, everything is completely sorted and ready to go. Following that, you're going to process your materials. What do you need to do to make sure that those materials are viable for another use, right? You're going to label it, put it in a package, put it on a shelf. So, like I said, very similar to how you catalog an artifact. Okay, so what is our process? I know that this looks like a lot, but like I said, it's just because we're high volume. What you're seeing here on the very top, these are recycling bins that we keep in every single sim space. So what we do here is, maybe directly next to the med cart or directly next to the trash can. We put this bin here instead. On that bin, it's going to say place used materials in here. Okay. You want to make sure that you have really clear signage on everything, or else you're going to end up with gum, sharps, all kinds of random stuff. And I will say, regardless, in the beginning, it is a learning curve. The faculty, the students, the staff, we're all trying to figure out the process. What goes where? What are we keeping? In the beginning, I highly suggest that you just say, anything that you think we might be able to reuse, throw it in the bin and I will decide. So here you have, okay, this is what you start the beginning of the day, or excuse me, end of day. This is what you have, okay? You're going to need those bins to be empty again. That way, when your learners are in that space in the morning for the next day, they have an empty bin to offload their materials into. So what you're going to do is you're going to take all of those bins, empty them into what I call the sorting bin or the holding space. This big, huge gray bin is where you're going to keep all of those materials until you're ready to deal with them. I kind of assimilate this process with working in food service, where you're rolling silverware. It's your side work. You always have it ready to go, ready to do, but you have your main priority job, which is sim ops first, right? So, anywho, this bin down here is used as your holding space whenever you can get to it. Then, when you are available, you're going to sort all of those materials by type, by function. Maybe something has been recycled one too many times. We're trying to get 3 uses out of all of these if we can. You sort, then you're going to repackage those materials per a guide that I authored. It's currently under review for publishing, but I'll show you a couple of excerpts. And then the materials, when they are repackaged, will be recirculated for skills practice or open lab. One thing that's really important about this initiative is that these recycled materials are going to be mostly used for practice. We're not going to put them out in anything that's high stakes. So we're not going to be putting out these materials when it comes to testing or in a simulation. So basically, when you have a learner who is just hammering at a skill, trying to get it down, they need to open 10 packages in a row in order to do that. That's great. But we'll give them the recycled stuff, right? Okay. Okay, so what you are going to want to do, excuse me, is designate a workspace. This is something that I learned very early on is pretty much the most important thing that you will have in your toolkit. What we were doing originally is using just a corner in the storage closet. And just take it from me, that's not a good way to handle your materials. Just full transparency, I had a spider one time, and after that, I was like, oh no, we got to find something else that's better. So then we started doing what I consider a temporary sorting setup, which is this. You have all of your materials. This right here is our actual storage unit. So that's only temporary. We set that stuff up at the beginning of the day. We get through what we can, but then you have to tear it down at the end of the day too. That's going to waste a lot of time. And that's your pretty much your most precious form of currency when it comes to this recycling protocol is time. If you're setting up and you're tearing down, you're wasting time that you could be using for repackages. So, yeah, we came up with this. This is an acronym that I use for the initiative. It's Sustainability in Simulation Operations. We call it SISO. Um, I created a workshop. Basically, it was a small simulation space that we were no longer really using. We were kind of using it for storage, anyways. And so I moved all of our stuff into there and started separating it out so that we could systematically start tackling all of the materials that we had collected. So in this space, in this workspace, there are a handful of things that you're going to want to make sure that you have. You're going to want to make sure that you have a sink and that you have suction. The reason why you're going to need suction is because when it comes to IV tubing, at least for us, our method is that we suction the tube, we suction all of the water out of the drip chamber using the suction canister at the head of the bed. You don't have to use this method. That's actually one of the beautiful things about this initiative. You can do it however it works for you. This is just how we do it. Some programs will use like a fish tank air pump to blow their tubing out. For us, we need suction in our workspace. Also a sink because we're working with wet materials. So you're also going to need to be washing your hands frequently. That's important. Another thing is very clear signage. So you're going to want to have signs that say, repackaged materials over here, right? Because one of the other things that you're going to run into is when you're repackaging stuff a lot, and you start getting really good at it, it's kind of hard to tell which is a good problem to have. It's kind of hard to tell what is a repackage and what is new. And you want to be able to make that distinction very clearly anywhere that you put anything. Recycled primary tubing versus new primary tubing. Make sure everything's labeled totally separately. You're also going to need time, right? We're lucky enough that we have a student worker. She's pictured right here. That's Sienna. And she offered to kind of help me get this initiative up off the ground and has dedicated a lot of time to us. And it's helped a lot, honestly. Another thing that has been very, very helpful is our instructional materials. I will show you. I know that this is kind of hard to look at, but here is a top-down image of a Foley kit. I'm sure that everybody here knows that one of the most difficult parts of repackaging a Foley kit is making sure that all of those folds are followed completely right, following the path of least resistance. So basically, our guide outlines all of the materials that are listed here and how to repackage them. I have photo collages of everything. I will say I want to eventually kind of transition these images so it's bottom up instead of top down, just because when you're repackaging, you're actually looking at this image first. But that's the thing is you just learn as you go, right? This is all a learning process. This is all new. Okay, so here's an excerpt from the guide. This is an image that shows how to repackage a CVP. You'll see that I made sure to put on the image that we use rubber cement because, like I said, this is all brand new. We're all learning. In the beginning, we actually had over 100 repackages that we had to go back and redo because they were all adhered with medical tape on the outsides. And I'm sure you guys can imagine that makes it impossible to maintain sterile technique, right? So just little lessons like that along the way that I'm hoping maybe people can kind of learn from me and use my experience as a template. Okay, so then here we have, here's another excerpt from the guide. This is just primary because it was the first one, but the guide goes through every single piece of tubing, all of its associated parts, caps. We learned in the beginning another thing. I was just putting out all of these recycled tubings without any caps on it because I'm not a nurse. I didn't realize how important that was. But now I do, right? We learned. So the problem we were running into is that we didn't have enough caps. The caps were getting thrown away. So we kind of, I came up with a solution that just any cap that fits is fine. It's about muscle memory. It's not about the social construct of this has to be the right cap in order for me to learn the skill. No, you take the cap off, it's muscle memory at that point, right? Another thing that I learned is Ziploc bags. As as small as it may sound, we can reuse a Ziploc bag hundreds of times. And that's plastic too, right? So a lot of places will use autoclave self-sealing pouches. I have done that, but to me, it's counterintuitive to order more plastic to avoid wasting plastic. So I I kind of we're learning as we go, right? And we've been doing photocopied labels on the insides of those. And as you can see here, you can always tell we do date and all of that because anything that's older than 6 months, I want to take it off the shelf. And at that point, I actually learned that you can donate that as a prop to CNA classes, PT courses. I've donated to standardized patients as a prop. Just because it's trash to us doesn't mean it's actually trash still, right? Okay, I also created a YouTube channel. I'll give you guys a moment if you want to scan the QR. This is a channel that basically is just kind of like was my diary, still is. My team, we've been contributing to it because along the way, I've also learned that this is not just about repackaging. It's also about how can we repair stuff too. Okay. So you can see here, this is my coworker Scott in the middle. So here's just an example of some of the videos that we have on there. Um, and as you can see, it's not just repackaging. We also have how to create an IV bag refill system, right? We're not repackaging that IV, we're just filling it up and putting a stopper back in it. It's as easy as that, right? Same thing with the injection pad. You can fix that with liquid latex, liquid silicone, whatever works for you guys. But sometimes it's easy if you just have a step by step to follow so that you know what you're doing. So we're trying to provide that resource as much as we can. Okay, I've already talked about some of the lessons learned. The number one thing being here is don't overcomplicate your process, or else people aren't going to want to do it. Like just full transparency, plain and simple. If it becomes too complicated, like the students are there to learn, the faculty is there to teach. We shouldn't overcomplicate this so much that that becomes our main priority is recycling. No, our main priority is making good nurses, right? So another thing that I learned is when you switch vendors, it significantly impacts your repackages. We switched from, I think it was from Medline to Pocket Nurse, and then we switched back again. And it just creates a bit of a problem where you're backed up and you're like, wow, I've got 100 Medline kits, but I'm not 100% sure what to do with them anymore. Um, they're all repackaged. We spent time on it. In that instance, you can do what I call scrapping for parts, where you can go through and say, okay, I can still reuse this specimen cup and marry it into another kit, right? A specimen cup can be married into lots of different kits. That could go into a straight catheter kit. It doesn't necessarily have to be identical. Um, Another thing that I've learned is you can make something new. I'm sure this looks familiar to a lot of people on this call. We end up with, no exaggeration, thousands of these Foley bags that don't have a kit to marry to. And so I've started making so many different things out of them. Primarily, my favorite thing is to use it as a drainage bag on a mannequin. It works great. It holds a lot more fluid. You can empty it a lot easier. I'll show you some pictures of some other things I've done with it as well. Okay, here's a topic that a lot of people don't like to talk about, but I'll do it. Why is mold important? Okay. I'm sure a lot of people on this call, it's kind of like a secret thing, like, oh, we've got mold, let's not talk about it. No, let's talk about it because the more mold that we have in our materials, the more that we're throwing away, right? So we learned basically, I'll show you in the next slide how we handled that. But we learned that the reason why we were getting mold is because we were putting tap water. Um, Came up with a solution for that. I'll show that to you in just a moment. In addition to when you're putting stuff like mixed materials, maybe somebody didn't close a roller clamp or whatever, you've got water just kind of floating around, not standing water, but things are kind of wet. You can throw silica in pretty much anything. If you have a bag of flushes, right, and they're filled, you can throw this silica in there. That's a naturally occurring compound that will soak up some of that moisture. Um, okay, so here is how we handle our what we fill our liquid materials with. So in the beginning, I was reading everywhere distilled water is the best. And honestly, that may be the case, but for our program, my main, mission was not to buy extra stuff to make this happen because that's so counterintuitive when it comes to emission demand and all of that. So I was like, what can we do that does not require buying a water distiller or having deep rock delivery or something like that that's just rotational? What can we do in-house? And that's the main thing is all of this is a homegrown solution. So we started using the purified water distillers for water bottles in the hallway and filling it with about 100, 200 mLs of isopropyl. And honestly, I have not found mold in anything ever since we started doing that. And it's been about 2 years. So, you just, it's trial and error, really. Okay, another thing that I've learned is housekeeping was throwing away our stuff a lot, which honestly was my fault for not properly labeling it. Again, like I said, labeling is really your best friend here. It's a tool. So I started doing this at the end of the day, putting painter's tape over our materials. That way they weren't being mistaken for trash. Um, Another thing that I learned, like I said, with the CVP repackages, we had medical tape all the way around the sides, right? I learned the hard way. You're going to want to go through and do quality control just randomly. On any given day, go into any given box that says recycled, grab a repackage, open it up, and make sure that it's being done right because our students deserve to have the same kit every single time, right? So here's an example. This is one of our CVPs from 2025. This is what it looks like now. Our system has gotten a lot better. We learned that you don't actually have to reuse the original packaging on the front. You can use a piece of paper, just a regular, normal piece of paper, and a photocopied label. And honestly, like you cannot tell the difference. It's really impressive how far we've come, honestly. And just learning little things like if you put a laptop on top of that CVP, it'll take some of the air out, these photos are basically just proof that this is a learning process and it will get better over time, right? Your team will start to learn as we go. Okay, another thing that I learned is repairing and repurposing. So in the beginning, I full transparency, I would find a vial that had mold in it and I would throw it in a sharps container because I just did not know any better. Um, Now, or not even mold, but if there was a big hole at the top, it's been poked way too many times, I would just throw it in a sharps container. And I'm like, wow, now we know you can actually take this, it's a bottle opener, and open up the top and recap those. Um, and we've saved so many vials because of it. Same thing with these were skins that belonged to an IV arm. We were gonna throw it away, and I was like, what's one more thing that we can do with that before it goes in the trash, right? So I actually skinned all of those arms that were going to go in the trash, and now we use them as overlays for moulage. We use them for test patches. Just basically, the more raw material that you have that's usable, the more stuff you can do with it, right? Okay, so
I'm
this is something.
I'm gonna
Oh,
interrupt for just half a second, just because of
yeah,
our shortened time, and let you
sure,
know that the meeting will cut off at 40 minutes. So we probably have about
okay,
2 to 3 minutes left for your presentation.
no problem. I'll make this my last slide actually. So okay, so this is something new. We're just quantifying our impact here. basically, we're keeping track now of how many units we're repackaging, how many we're saving, we're getting donations in, we're getting donations out. Um, yeah, so basically, we're starting to quantify, and hopefully, a year from now, I'll be able to come back to you guys with a really solid number of how much we've been saving on average. Okay, and now I will open it up for questions.